So if you're dealing with a narcissist, be it a covert narcissist, a grandiose narcissist, or a malignant narcissist, they engage in all kinds of behaviors even while you are just in a relationship with them. They're gaslighting you, they're lying to you, they're manipulating you, you know, perhaps even being abusive. More than likely, they're being abusive. Some are sneakier at it than others. Covert narcissists, in particular, are very sneaky at it. And so, if you are dealing with a covert narcissist, I have several videos on covert narcissists, including why covert narcissists are dangerous and the covert passive aggressive narcissist. And you're going to want to check out those videos for sure if you're dealing with covert narcissists. But whatever kind of narcissist you're dealing with, they are being their narcissist selves the entire time that you're in a relationship with them. So there are three phases to a narcissistic relationship. It's love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And remember that the phases of the relationship don't actually happen in a linear fashion. They happen at the same time. Sometimes they can be devaluing you while they're love bombing you. And in fact, there was a study done by a psychologist with monkeys that showed that if monkeys were given a reward for doing something good every single time, nothing happened in their brain. But if they were only given a reward intermittently, variably, where the monkeys couldn't predict when they were going to get this reward, the dopamine levels in their brain actually rose to the level of someone on cocaine. And that's what happens with a relationship with narcissists. They go back and forth. The narcissists go back and forth between love bombing and devaluing, and love bombing and devaluing. And so you are left with almost being addicted to, in a physiological way, to wanting their praise, to wanting that love bomb, because they start out so charming and they really try to set themselves up to be the perfect person for you and hold out all these things that they're going to do for you, or um, even do things for you right at that time. I mean, if you ever watched the Dirty John miniseries, you recall that that guy was just setting himself to be up to be perfect for this successful single businesswoman. He was getting her dry cleaning and making smoothies for her in the morning and all these things at the same time that he was isolating her from her family and turning people against her. So they go through these phases of the relationship. So, what happens when you are doing battle with a narcissist is they just become that same person, but on steroids. So, it's so much worse. They turn up the heat because, unfortunately, for narcissists, you're either for them or you're against them. They need an endless amount of supply. And if you are cutting off that supply to them, then they just see you as the enemy. And for those of you who watch my videos on a regular basis, you know that I've had to work two covert narcissists out of my life, and it was not an easy thing. It wasn't husbands, but it was people that were close to me and close enough to do serious damage and cause lots and lots of trauma. And, I'm telling you that if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Narcissists have a symbiotic relationship with empaths. And, narcissists see that empaths have the qualities that they want. And empaths, we just think that we can love everybody back to health and, that we have enough love to give. And it just ends up being this black hole. And so they literally, they're often called energy vampires or leeches or parasites or whatever, but they literally suck the life out of you. And it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. And so when you go to do battle with a narcissist, they're literally um, turning up the heat because now you're the enemy. now you no longer have any value for them. So there's no, like, a reasonable person, those of us who are in reasonable land, we think, oh, we can just walk away and wish each other well, and we'll come up with an agreement that's reasonable. And hey, the law provides for certain things, and depending on what kind of battle you're doing with a narcissist. But um, you can't, that's not how it goes with a narcissist. So if you're getting ready to do battle, or you're in the trenches of doing battle with a narcissist, there are a few things that you can do to beat them at their own game and preserve your own sanity along the way. The first thing is, don't allow them to disrespect you. When you allow them to disrespect you, you're basically giving them permission to do that. And they know how to push your buttons, let me tell you. I mean, especially if you've been in a long term relationship with this person, they've studied you, they know exactly what your weaknesses are. And so that's where they're going to go. They're going right there to to try to make you look as bad as possible. Everything you say or do is going to be turned against you, used against you, twisted, manipulated. So what you're going to have to do is just maintain your own level of dignity, maintain your own level of respect, and demand respect from them. If they are screaming, yelling, trying to talk to you in a way that's overly emotional, and they're not in control, they want you to be out of control too, because they get supply, they get narcissistic supply by seeing you squirm. So by just maintaining that, hey, we're not going to have this conversation. You're not being respectful to me. This is not productive. We'll have this conversation when you can be respectful to me. Same thing if they are lighting you up in text messages or lighting you up in emails, and saying all sorts of disrespectful things. You can just simply respond and say, I disagree with what you're saying. Please do not speak to me that way. It is disrespectful. And then respond to the parts of it that you might have to respond to, like, what time are you picking up the kids, or something like that. But other than that, you're not going to get into the trenches with them and sling that same sort of mud. You're going to demand respect from them, and you're going to condition them that this is how it's going to go. If they want you to interact with them, they're going to have to respect you, and it's going to drive them insane when you do that, believe me. Okay, the next thing that you can do is document, document, document. And we cannot say this enough, those of us who are in this field and professionals in this area. You just never know what's going to end up being your leverage. And when you're dealing with narcissists, you have to have a super strong strategy, and you have to be able to create leverage. And I often hear people ask me, what is leverage? What does that look like? And leverage can be a smoking gun, like the one thing that for sure the narcissist doesn't want anyone to know. um, or it could be something like that the narcissist is more motivated to resolve your differences than you are. Or it can be an accumulation of things. It can be, you know, 15 different text messages that show that they're a liar. And you create an exhibit that shows that. It could be that they didn't show up for picking up the kids on time 20 times in a row, or they changed the schedule every single time that they were supposed to take the kids, or whatever. But, it could be any accumulation of those things. And so it's really, really important to do that documentation, even if it seems mundane. Just keep the app open on on your phone, the Notes app, or there's apps where you can actually they pay, to have a documentation feature or whatever. But basically, you just don't really know what's going to be the pattern that you're going to be able to bring out, or what's going to be that leverage. And, for sure, the leverage is always going to be around what is their biggest motivation, which is, the one thing they don't want to come out. it's going to be around their ego, because the thing about narcissists is, they're just always in this mode of self-preservation. They're actually very easy to figure out. And narcissists are the most afraid, most scared little personalities on the planet. They have fragile egos because they have no sense of inner value. All of their value comes from the external. So uh, when you are looking at your documentation and figuring out what your leverage is, you're going to want to think about what is their biggest motivation. What is it that they really don't want brought out? And what is it that's going to make them look bad? Because narcissists do not want to look bad, especially in front of people that they really respect. So if somebody is involved that they really respect, such as a mediator or other lawyers or the judge, especially the judge, they're not going to want to look bad. So document, document, document everything. Okay. You never know when you're going to need it. If this is all sounding really good to you so far and you are so ready to start doing the things that I'm telling you to do, give me an amen in the comments. Okay, the third thing that you can do is figure out what kind of narcissist you're dealing with and understand what behaviors each one uh, engages in. So some of it is similar. All narcissists engage in certain types of behaviors like gaslighting and manipulation, but they do it in subtly different ways depending on the type of narcissist that you're dealing with, whether it's covert, malignant, or grandiose. And you will want to brush up on the different types of narcissists so that you can figure out what kind you're dealing with and then find out what behaviors they engage in. And once you do that, then you will expect it. You're going to go, oh, there's that person being that covert narky self. That's what they do. And you won't take it as personally because you'll just understand that that's the way they act. Okay. So the third thing you can do is figure out what kind of narcissist you're dealing with, brush up on the types of behaviors associated with each narcissist, and then expect them to act like themselves. They don't change. Narcissists do not change. They can pretend like they know, like, I mean, they're very good at pretending. They do know what good behavior looks like. That's how they were able to rope you in the first place. And that's how they parade around the world and get people to think that they're so great. Especially covert narcissists are really, really good at that. But you're going to want to figure out what kind you're dealing with and then not be surprised when they just act like themselves. Okay, the fourth thing is when you are getting ready to ask for something from the narcissist, you're going to want to ask for way more than what you actually want. The narcissist is going to want to feel like they beat you, like they got to you because they get supply from that. Their egos won't allow you to win, at least on paper. So if you are ready to just give them a certain amount, give away a certain amount that you control, that you decide ahead of time, I'm going to be willing to take this much, or I'll be willing to give up this thing, but act like it's like the one thing you definitely don't want to give up. Because if there's something that's super important to you, then that's the one thing that they're going to want to make sure that you don't get. So you're kind of playing a game here, and I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator. But basically, you're going to want to give them um, certain things that you kind of decide ahead of time that you were willing to give, and then um, work back to what you actually want. And then when you get there, you have to act like, oh my God, I can't believe I had to give up so much, and this is just awful, and oh, you really took advantage of me and whatever. But you can just go home and smile and pour your champagne or whatever and do it in the privacy of your own home after you've won the things that you wanted. And number 5, the last one is, I take it from like this old commercial, never let them see you sweat, but really you never want to let them see you sweat, cry, get emotional, lose control, then they get supply from that. If you need to, cry in the bathroom, and then come back out, splash water on your face. If you wear makeup and you're a female, whatever, put makeup back on. If you're a guy, just splash water in your face, comb your hair, whatever you need to do to just maintain control, and never let them see that they are getting under your skin, because as soon as they see that, then they know they have you. Um, if you know you're going to have to interact with them, you know, and let's say it's a school meeting or it's a mediation or something like that, don't get there too early, get there on time. Don't give them opportunities to grab you and try to manipulate you, because that's when they'll start to get under your skin again. Remember what I said at the beginning, these narcissists, they know how to push your buttons. So never let them see you sweat. So let's talk about what narcissists fear the most. Okay, so there are a lot of things that narcissists fear. And really, what it comes down to is what they don't want you to know. So let's talk about the psychology of a narcissist. And when you are negotiating with them, it's really, really important to understand who it is that you're dealing with so that you can understand what motivates them. Really, what it comes down to is understanding what motivates them, understanding how to get them to shift so that you can understand how to create a strategy, so that you can understand how to create leverage. That's my whole S.L.A.Y strategy, right? Which is strategy, leverage, anticipating, and focusing on you, your case, and your position. And that's my whole S.L.A.Y methodology. And so when you're dealing with a narcissist, you have to understand that you're dealing with a person who has very little sense of self. They're actually very afraid people. They're worried that if they give anything, that they're going to not have enough for themselves. It's scarcity mentality at its most extreme. Okay, they're like the hollow chocolate Easter bunnies. They look good on the outside, but there's nothing going on the inside. And the only thing that motivates them is this sense of narcissistic supply, that that they want this external validation. That's the only thing that motivates them. So what do they not want you to know? What do they fear the most? Well, number one, that they fear you more than you fear them. Okay. I mean, they're actually way more afraid of you than you are of them. And, it's like the wizard behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. They're like scared. And they put this big, huge thing up like the Wizard of Oz is, like, the all great and powerful. But the truth of the matter is, they're way more afraid of you than you are of them. Right. So that's number one. Number two is they are truly the most scared little creatures on the planet. And that's why they do all the things that they do. I mean, I did a mediation with one of the most malignant narcissists ever, and he came crashing into the mediation and immediately started making unreasonable demands. Like, there were these dogs that had been at his house, and the adult daughter had come over to the house and had taken the dogs. It wasn't even the wife that had taken the dogs. I was representing the wife. She didn't have the dogs. He starts off 8 o'clock in the morning. I want the dogs back. She doesn't have the dogs. I'm not mediating. I'm not doing anything until you have the dogs. He doesn't want the dogs. He just wants to make a statement. He wants to demonstrate that he has control because he's afraid. Because he was afraid that this process was going to be a scary process for him. People who are not afraid, they don't do things like that. They don't act that way. So number two, they are the most scared little creatures on the planet. They really are. All right. Number three is what I've been saying. They have no sense of self. They're not standing in their power. They don't have that inner sense of feeling whole and complete, like that oak tree that just stands, that just moves with the wind, but really stays rooted and grounded. I mean, it's like if somebody calls you a name or whatever, and if you know that that's not what you are, it just bounces off of you. But they take it all on because they have no sense of self, and so all of their sense of anything of themselves comes from that external, comes from that sense of narcissistic supply. And that's how you create that leverage, because that's what exposes them. All right. And then that leads me to number four. Number four is what they fear the most: being exposed. And that's how you build leverage, by the way, is around exposing them. And I have a lot more of this in my video, by the way, called The One Secret That the Narcissist Never Wants You to Know, which you should definitely check out. But they definitely do not want to be exposed. All right. Number five. What's another thing that they fear the most? That you're going to fight back. That's why they say things like, oh, I'm going to take you down and I'm going to do this to you and this is what's going to happen. And because they're afraid that you're actually going to do it. They are scared to death that you're actually going to fight back. Because if you do, they actually get unbalanced. They don't want you to fight back. Believe me, they don't. Number six, they don't want you to not need them. They want you to need them. They want to be in control of you. Oh my goodness. I had a case one time where my client was divorcing his wife, but the his mother was actually in control of the entire family. It was an Italian family, and the custody evaluator actually referred to her as like the godmother, sort of like the godfather, but she was like the godmother, where she controlled the entire family through the money and the power and all of that. And the fact that my client was successful in his own right and wanted to break away from the family was the cardinal sin. And the custody evaluator actually put that in the custody evaluation. Like, he no longer needed her. And she was a malignant narcissist. So that was one of the things that happened. Like, she didn't want him to not need her. So, number seven, one of the worst fears that they have, honestly, is that you no longer think that they're relevant. Think about some of the politicians, I mean, or some of the celebrities out there. I mean, they'll do anything to stay relevant sometimes, right? I mean, anything to stay in the news, anything to stay, like you've seen, them do crazy things just to stay on the front page, just to have reporters talking about them because they want to stay relevant. They want to stay current. They want people to be noticing them. So that's number seven. Number eight is that you no longer think that they matter. And number nine is similar, which is that you've completely moved on. I mean, that is really what they fear the most. I mean, that's what really crushes them, is when you've completely wiped them from the CPU of your life. That's the way I look at it, is like your life is a computer program and you've been able to go in and just go, oh, here they are, here they are, here they are, wipe, 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 wipe. You never existed in my life. Who are you again? What's your name? Like, where somebody can actually say their name and you feel nothing. I mean, some of the best emails and messages that we get on my team are the ones where people say, I did your program, I got the results that I wanted, and wow, the surprising results that I had is that my fear has disappeared. I am no longer afraid of this person. And if you are so ready to feel that you are no longer afraid of this person or whoever it is or any narcissist, Give me an I'm ready in the comments right now because that's what they fear the most. You're not afraid of them anymore. You just moved on. That you're not moved by them. You're not intimidated by them. They're just a gnat flying around, you know? And really, that's the best thing for you, too, by the way, because when you can get to that point, when you can get to the point where you have overcome everything that you needed to overcome with any kind of a toxic personality in your life, whether it's in your business life or your personal life, and you've gotten to a point where you've been able to not feel intimidated when you walk into a room, where you feel powerful and persuasive and you feel whole and complete, and you feel like you are living into the person that you're meant to be, that you're meant to be here. That's living into your power. That's being who you're truly meant to be. You are a person, a soul who is having a human experience, who was meant to be here, who's meant to shine. You're not meant to be small. And that is when you are truly free. And that is what the narcissist fears the most, that you're living in your power and truly free. I've been there. I know the pain. I know the humiliation. I know the feeling of being like, it's time. It is so time to be done with this. You sit down, you have that conversation, and what happens? You know what? You're just too insecure. That's your problem. That's your problem right there. So that's one of the things that you hear, right? Have you heard that before? Give me a totally in the comments right now. Yeah, it's, you know what? It's you. You're too insecure. That's number one. Number two, you're the one. You made me do that. They cheat. They go out. They cheat on you. Your fault. Your fault. You made me cheat. You know why? Because you were too tired. You didn't give me sex. You didn't, whatever. That was why. Your fault. You made me do it. Three, is you're the one who makes me angry. You make me angry. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that one before. They're like angry all the time, and you have no idea why they're so angry. Why are they angry? It's out of the air. You've done nothing. You're still there. You're just living your life. And they're just like so filled with anger all the time. You know why? Because they hate themselves. The narcissists just hate, they have this inner hatred about themselves. It has nothing to do with you. Hurt people, and they end up bleeding out all over everybody else, and you cannot take that on. You just have to have like this Teflon around you. Just pretend like there's an invisible bubble around you, and you don't have to take that on. So the next one is, you made me lie. You made me lie. What is that about? You know what? Don't take that on either, because they are pathological liars. They lie about everything. They lie about things they don't even need to lie about, and they lie about things that are readily verifiable. That's the other thing that's kind of crazy. It's definitely, but that's what they do. But remember that becomes your leverage. That becomes your leverage. So when I teach you what to do in my S.L.A.Y program, which you can check out at joinslay.com, you can use that as your leverage. Next, you provoked me. You're over there just doing nothing, and they tell you provoked me. I mean, half the time, they say that, you used a crazy tone. Why are you bringing that up now? Because they are very, very easily slighted. They have no sense of inner value. They have to get all of their value from external sources. You can't take any of this personally. And one of my very favorite books, which a lot of you know, is The Four Agreements. And one of the agreements that you have to say is, I'm not taking this personally, because the way people treat other people is directly reflected from the way that they feel about themselves. If people love themselves, and they treat other people great. If they don't, then they treat other people like crap. How they feel about themselves has nothing to do with you. The next one is,
You make me angry. You make me. Anything is you make me. Even with you, by the way, you make me. No one can make you anything. Just remember that. Don't allow anyone, don't give anyone that privilege. I've really, really tried to instill that in my children, and I really tried to keep that for myself as well. All right, next one is you're trying to confuse me. What is this crazy text message that says, hey, honey, loved it last night? With hearts emojis, and you're asking about it. Oh, you're trying to confuse me. How am I trying to confuse you when I'm just asking you a question? They're actually trying to confuse you, but they say that back to you. Next one is, you should have known how I would react. You should have known. Well, how are you supposed to ask the question? Or one of the other things that I love, by the way, which isn't even on this list, is why are you bringing that up now? Why are you bringing that up now? Because they never is a good time. The answer is never. When would I supposed to be bringing this up? Never. The answer is never, right? But that's not a blame shifting thing. That's for something else. You should have known. You should have known. So it's you. Back to you, your problem, your thing. This is blame shifting. These are blame shifting phrases. And then the next one is, you're PMSing. Are you sick? Are you tired? You look stressed. Everyone else thinks I'm great. You're the problem. You must be the one because everyone else thinks that I'm wonderful. No one else thinks that there's anything. You're the only one. So they put it back on you like that.
So if you are dealing with that pesky, awful, toxic narcissist, and you are just at your wit's end and you're trying to figure out how to outsmart them, here are 5 secrets to outsmarting them. Number 1, agree with them. And I know what you're saying. What? Agree with them? They're crazy. They're pathological liars. They say anything they want to. They accuse me of stuff that's not true. I get it. I do. I've dealt with them. I've represented them. I've had them on the other side of my cases. Had to deal with them in my own life. So, nobody's immune. Narcissists are everywhere, right? But I'm talking about ways that you can bring them down. Because remember that a narcissist game is to manipulate you. You think it's to beat you, but it really isn't. Beating you isn't the outcome. There's really no outcome. They don't really have a goal or an outcome. Their outcome is just manipulating you, messing with you, making themselves look as good as possible. And the only way that they can make themselves look good is by putting you down. And so if you steal their thunder, if you take their ammunition away, then they don't know what to do with that. So you just say, if they say to you, you're always late, just say, you know what, you're right. I'm always late. And they're gonna, bristle at that at first. Oh, you're being, you're talking down to me, condescending, whatever. They can say whatever you want. Just say, no, I'm always late. That's what you say. I'm always late. And you're not saying it in a. Be careful not to say it in a way that's sarcastic or where they can tell that they're getting to you, because the whole purpose of this is to just show them that you're not affected, that you're completely nonplussed by what they're saying and how they're saying it. That's their perspective. You're always late, whatever. And they'll be thrown off their game with that. Okay. Now, the one little caveat I will say is if you're going to court with a narcissist, you definitely don't want to say this like in a deposition or in court or something like that. This is where you're just having a conversation with this other person and you're just coming up with ways to outsmart them and kind of beat them at their own game. So by them trying to manipulate you by getting a rise out of you and you just saying you're right, it stuns them. They're not quite sure what to do with that. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is the ear method. This comes from Bill Eddy, who is an author, an attorney, and a psychologist, and he's written books like Splitting and Biff and The Five Types of People That'll Ruin Your Life. And he says you use ear statements. And this is especially true if you've got somebody who's just completely out of control and just losing their mind on you. You show empathy, attention, and respect. Ear. EAR. And I know what you're thinking. You don't want to show them empathy, attention, or respect because you don't empathize with them. You don't want to give them attention, and you certainly don't respect them. I get it. This is to outsmart the narcissist, remember? So, if you act the way the narcissist expects you to act, then they know they have you. If you act in a way that they don't expect you to act, just like in number one, where we said just agree with them, this is where you're giving them a little bit of attention. And remember, that's what the narcissist wants. They want attention. So you're just giving them just enough to say, I see that you're upset. It must be difficult to travel or whatever it is that you want to say to them, but you're just saying it without emotion. Just show them a little bit of empathy, attention, and respect. And if you're dealing with a narcissist in your life, just put yes in the comments. Okay, number 3 thing you can do is figure out leverage against them. Even if you're not negotiating with them in a formal sense, figuring out a way that you can gather around them and find their inconsistencies and figure out what it is that they're saying that they're lying about, catch them in their lies. Now, what I want you to do when you're doing this, though, is not show them right away what you've got, because if you're showing it to them real time, then they're constantly out gaming you, which they're very good at. I mean, narcissists are master manipulators, especially covert narcissists. Covert narcissists are great at looking really, really wonderful to 99% of the world. I know I've had to deal with them myself. And if you want to know more about covert narcissists, make sure that you check out my video on covert narcissism in relationships, and I will definitely drop a link to that video below. But in the meantime, while you're gathering leverage and you're gathering motivation for them to want to have a conversation with you or do what you want them to do, you're just gathering, and you're waiting to use that leverage at a time that is most opportune for you. And that the time that you're going to use that is when you have them fully surrounded and there's no, it's like airtight. It's like soldiers that are surrounding a city or something like that. There's no escaping, because that's when they go crazy and their true colors really show through, which again is more leverage that you'll be able to potentially use down the road. Okay, number 4 is throw them off the scent. So what I mean by this is don't show a narcissist what you really want, because the minute you tell them what it is that you definitely don't want or you definitely do want, then that's the thing that they're going to do whatever they can to make sure you don't get it. Because, if you're trying to outsmart a narcissist here, you don't show your hand. You don't show what it is that you want. You throw them off the scent. You act like nonchalant about the thing that you really want the most. And then the thing that you don't care about, you act like that's the most important thing ever. And especially if you're negotiating with a narcissist, this is very, very critical. I have a video on how to negotiate with a narcissist, and I will drop a link to that below. Check that out if you're trying to negotiate with a narcissist. But regardless if you're trying to negotiate or not, you're still in a negotiation if you're having to deal with this narcissist. So don't show them what it is that means the most to you, because that's what they will then target. Because then in the end, if you end up with what you want, who really cares if they knew that that was what you want? And if they think that you didn't get what you wanted, act like, oh my gosh, this was just horrible or whatever. And then, when you go back to your house or you go back to your room or whatever, you can just be like Dr. Evil and squeal and and you got what you wanted. So who really cares if he or she knew that you got what you wanted? Okay. And number 5 has nothing to do with the narcissist at all. It has everything to do with you. And in my book, Negotiate Like You Matter, and in my programs, those of you who've worked with me or those of you who've read my book, that the most important thing is your internal feeling of value. So you focus on your own power, you focus on your own value and your own internal feeling of value. Remember that narcissists have no internal feeling of value. They get all their feeling of any sort of value from the external. And the more you can just be that oak tree and that you can just stand in your power, the less the narcissist will get to you. And that is really the best way to outsmart that narcissist. I definitely would try to get that narcissist out of your world if you possibly can. I always say, show them the door to your world, have a nice life. But obviously, if you're co-parenting with a narcissist, and you're still going to have them in your world, do something like parallel parenting, something where you don't have to deal with them on a regular basis.
I want you to find your place, find your home here. One of the things that narcissists do is isolate you. And I don't want you to feel isolated anymore. I want you to feel like you have a place. Here's one of the ways that I want you to start knowing how you can slay that bully. And that is understanding the power of knowledge, understanding the power of step one. Don't run. Step two is making that U-turn. And step three is breaking free. Step one is knowledge, boundaries, seeing them for who they are. And this is all part of that S.L.A.Y methodology, strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. But don't run. You're course correcting. You're turning things around. You are stopping this conditioning and understanding that they started right from the beginning, conditioning you, mirroring you, charming you, being exactly what they knew you wanted them to be. And they're really, really good at that. This is a survival skill for them. So they started at the beginning becoming exactly what you wanted them to be. They read that in you, understanding that you can't take that personally. You can't feel guilty about that. You can't feel shame about that. They're very, very good at reading people. I felt a lot of blame and shame about that initially. I was supposed to be strong. I was supposed to be powerful. I was supposed to be this badass attorney. Even when I started on YouTube, tell my story. Even at the beginning, when I saw, oh my gosh, the first videos that were going viral, I thought, oh my gosh, it's how to negotiate with a narcissist. I thought, I don't know if I really want to be the narcissism queen. And I thought, okay, I'll do a few more of these. But then I thought, I don't really want to tell my own story of how I'd had a narcissistic business partner long after I'd already built this massive, huge practice as a divorce attorney where I was representing big, powerful people, right? But I didn't want to tell my story about that because I felt shameful about that. I thought, how did this happen to me? But it's because they're very good at reading people. They're very good at knowing how to find that crack, find that crevice, and getting in there. And remember, they don't attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attach themselves to you because you have so much. But once you see those signs and once you know those signs, then it'll never happen to you again. And the truth of the matter is, once you have authentic power, once you know who you are, then they can never touch you again. There's a line in The Wizard of Oz where Glinda the Good Witch is talking to Dorothy, and the Wicked Witch of the West comes in and tries to be around Glinda and Dorothy. And Glinda says, go away. You have no power here. And there's so much in that because basically what she's saying is you have no power around people who know who they are. You have no power around authentic goodness. That's how it is with narcissists as well. When you know who you are, When you are authentically in your own being, they don't have true power. And really, it is the power of the universe. It's the power of true love. It's the power of true heart. And when you're deep down inside using the power of your soul and you are authentically in your own zone, they don't have power. They're definitely much more afraid of you than you are of them. So step one is don't run, creating boundaries, seeing them for who they are, starting to look at it as if you're a third party, starting to observe, almost like you're observing a child having a tantrum on the floor, and starting to demand that you be spoken to with respect. You can always say that. You can always start using phrases that are ones that are saying, hey, this approach is not working for me. I deserve to be spoken to with a level of respect. You don't have to engage. You don't have to say anything at all. The point is, don't allow yourself to be triggered. Don't allow yourself to be baited. Pretend like you're reporting the news. Never explain, justify, or overshare. That is step one, don't run. Step two, make a U-turn. This is where you are starting to turn things around. You're starting to move forward. You start presenting agreements. You start using your leverage. Remember, S is strategy. So S is strategy, and this is where you are actually saying, that's part of your step one, right? And when you are making a strategy, you are making sure that you have a clear vision. A lot of times when you are dealing with a narcissist, you're very, very apt to feel like you're just on the defensive all the time. And when you're on the defensive all the time, you just feel like all you want to do is say, here's what I want. I want them to stop lying. All I want is a good lawyer. I just want everybody to see them for who they are. Those are not a clear vision for what you want. So a clear vision for what you want is, I want a settlement of 50% of the assets, and I want it to be done within 6 months, and I want freedom from this situation, and I want to be able to live in a home that looks like this. What is it that you want? Remember that football teams don't win on a good defense. The offense is what scores the points. So, you want to be the one creating that vision. And that's how you can now start to create action steps and have a system for creating an action step. But you have to have a vision first. L is leverage. And that's where you get into your step two and making that U-turn. How are you going to create leverage? And remember, leverage has to do with their supply, diamond level supply versus coal level supply. So diamond level supply is how they look to the world. And then coal level supply is manipulating you, making you squirm, making you feel bad. And they will keep coming back to you and getting that coal level supply as long as they're getting it. As long as they're getting it from you, they will keep coming back because it's a source. The key is to figure out a form of supply that's more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from manipulating you and jerking you around, which is that coal level supply, and then threaten that source of supply. That's your strategy. But you can't actually take that form of supply away, because if you do, then your leverage is gone. It's ethically manipulating the manipulator. And that is the only thing that you can do. Understanding that how narcissists think has to do with the formation of their brain as children. It's a physiological issue that during childhood, they experienced trauma. When we are in a situation as human beings where we are presented with feelings that we need to feel like we are in survival mode, our bodies feel like we need to either fight, flight, or freeze. When that happens, our brains produce chemicals. It's cortisol, it's epinephrine, or adrenaline. If that happens on a regular basis, then it causes arrested development in children in the limbic system part of their brain. That is then what is referred to as narcissistic injury. When that narcissistic injury is triggered, it can cause narcissistic rage. It can cause a number of issues. Then they're thinking from that part of their brain. When that happens, they don't even necessarily know what they've done. They don't remember. Sometimes they do things that are not rational. You're interacting with that part of their brain at that point. It's black and white. What triggers them? It could be any number of things. It could be that they feel slighted. It could be an eye roll. It could be potentially feeling like they're going to be exposed, but it could be anything. It could be nothing. It could be something that you have no idea what it could be. Once you're against them, you become public enemy number one, and they have to take you down before you can take them down. The thing about that is that they will take themselves down to take you down. The myth is that they just want to win. The problem with that is that line of thinking is that it completely discounts and forgets about that coal level supply. It only takes into account diamond level supply. People think, well, what is it that they want? I'll just give it to them and then I'll be done. What you end up doing is you end up giving away your leverage. You end up basically negotiating against yourself right from the beginning. And by the way, they don't even appreciate it. They just feel entitled to whatever it is that you gave them at the beginning. Now you've given away your leverage and you're still nowhere. You're actually behind. You have to think offensively and strategically from the beginning, especially if you're dealing with a real narcissist. That's L. A is anticipating. And that is, part of what we've already been talking about, but also anticipating that they're going to try to trigger you. They're going to try to bait you. They're going to be emotional. They're going to be like this. So having all kinds of strategies, ways to deal with them, ways to interact with them, ways to handle them. Always wear that white hat, never the black hat, because they will do things. And every single time you want to be prepared. Instead of expecting them to act like rational, reasonable people and overlaying that, why aren't they acting like this? You have to say, every time they act the way they do, you just document it, write it down, and you go, thank you very much. I have something else that I can now use, and looking at it like that, understanding how you're going to use that to present. In my book, I give you lots and lots of go-to ways that you can start using all of these pieces of the puzzle, and tons of okay, here's a grab and go. Here's a grab and go. Here's a grab and go, because I want you to have all the tools in your toolbox, lots of arrows in your quiver. That's why make sure you come to the launch event on September 30th, which is going to be amazing. This is going to be huge. I have so many incredible gifts for people who show up live. So make sure you come to slaythebullylaunch.com. For people who invite people to the event, we've got tons and tons of gifts for people who invite people. Like if you invite 5 people, you get 2 free chapters to my book. If you invite 10 people, you get, I think, a signed copy of my book, and you get some digital wallpaper for your phone. And if you invite 25 people, you get something else. So make sure you go to slaythebullylaunch.com, sign up. Next is the why. This is the you being powerful, you being the best version of yourself, you being your mindset, you being on the offensive. 100% of any win is won before of any negotiation is won before you even walk into a room. You have to be powerful. And by the way, you and you alone define your value. One of my most favorite stories is how I learned this myself. I had been practicing as an attorney for about 8 years. I went and worked for Morgan Stanley as a financial advisor for a couple of years. And then I went back to law to start my law practice. I remember saying to my business coach at the time that I was so worried that people were going to think that I was a flake. And she said, you can tell people that you're a flake. And she said, people will think what you tell them to think. She said, you can tell people that you're a flake, or you can tell people that you are the only attorney in town that has a financial background. Which story would you like to tell? And I said, well, maybe I'll tell that story. And I told that story. And, that was what I decided would be how I would present myself. People will think what you tell them to think. How do you show up? What is your aura? You and you alone define your value. And so within 2 years of having that conversation with my business coach, I had one of the biggest, most powerful practices in Florida. And I was representing billionaires and celebrities and all sorts of things. And I was on extra being a commentator for celebrity divorces and all sorts of things. All sorts of things happened to me, but it wouldn't have happened if I had shown up and it was like apologetic and, oh, I'm a flake and all of that. It doesn't happen in reverse. You have to believe it first. And in this video, I'm also going to give you 8 key phrases to help you shut down those narcissists before they absolutely drive you crazy. All right, so let's get started. The first thing is that you want to understand that they want you want to kind of take yourself out of this situation. So the more you can kind of start looking at it almost like they're toddlers having a tantrum on the floor, the better it's going to be for you. Because what they're trying to do is drag you into that quicksand with them, drag you into that mud with them. And there's a number of reasons that they do that. One is that they get something called narcissistic supply by dragging you into that mud with them. And that feeds them, that feeds their ego, it feeds their inner empty self by doing that. It's kind of like I call it their food, their lifeblood, their oxygen. And that's what they need. It's that inner emptiness that they feel. And by doing that, you're kind of feeding that. And that's why you end up feeling so empty yourself. They call them energy vampires for a reason. And that's part of the reason, because you end up feeling like you're being sucked dry. I remember when I was dealing with a business partner who was a narcissist, before I even knew anything about narcissism, I used to think, my God, it's like a leech. I just feel like I'm being leeched. And I didn't know any other language to use, but I just felt drained, sucked dry, like the life was being drained out of me. And that's why you feel that. So you want to understand that you've got to figure out a way to create these boundaries to stop that draining from you, to stop that. So the way you've got to start is, I call it step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn, and step 3, break free. That step 1 is that first step. It's so important to start to look at things almost as a third party, look at things almost as an observer. And so that, when you're using these phrases, you almost have to take the emotion out of it. All right. So that's the first real step when you're using these phrases. Okay. Look at it as if you're looking at a child having a tantrum. Looking at the narcissist from an observer point of view, and you stop having the emotional reaction. You can go afterwards and scream into your pillow, cry in the shower, talk to your therapist, whoever you need to, and have your emotional reaction afterward. But when you're with them, not have the emotional reaction there, because that feeds them. That is what they are looking for. That is what they want. The next reason that you don't want to have these emotional reactions is because they will use these emotional reactions against you. So not only are you feeding that need for supply, but you're also potentially going to hurt yourself, because what they're trying to do is bait you. What they're trying to do is trigger you, manipulate you, and get you to do something so that they can potentially use your emotional reaction against you. So, and especially if you're in the discard phase of a relationship with the narcissist, they want to be able to go, oh, look, there's the crazy one. There's the emotional one. There's the one that has the problem. And if you're in a court situation, it happens all the time. And I've seen it with my clients. I've seen it with in situations where on the stand, in situations that were extremely inconvenient, cross-examination, trial, depositions, where you don't want it to happen, right? And they're very, very good at that, where they look like they're the calm ones, the collected ones, the charming, charismatic ones. And then everybody else in the system thinks that they're the normal ones, the non-narcissistic ones, the fine ones, the good ones. The other party is made to look like the emotional one, the one with the problem, because they bait you, they trigger you, they make you look like the crazy person. So you want to be very, very careful about not taking that bait and not allowing them to trigger you. Remember, everything you put your hand to is a potential trial exhibit. What you write, what you post on social media, how you respond to those text messages, to those emails, to those direct messages, what you say in conversations, what you say in front of people. Be very, very careful about those things. So that's why, go to disarmthenarc.com and grab my key phrases for disarming narcissists. You definitely want to do that. These are some cautions that I have for you. And then the third reason why you want to be very careful about how you are responding and talking to a narcissist is because every single time you get baited, every single time you get dragged into the mud, that narcissist, as long as you're giving them supply, they're never, ever, ever going to leave you alone. They're never going to be gone because they're still getting that food. They're still getting that lifeblood. They're still getting that oxygen. So they're still going to come around. 3 good reasons to use these key phrases for shutting down narcissists. Okay. So, number 1, you can say something like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way. Now, be careful you don't say, I'm sorry, or whatever, unless you are sorry, but you just say, I'm sorry you feel that way. I understand that that's what you think, whatever, but I'm sorry that you feel that way. You're not saying anything really. You're just saying, I'm sorry that that's how you feel. It just basically kind of puts it back on them. That's how you feel. I get it. I'm sorry that's how you feel. And it just lets them know that I heard what you said and I acknowledge that that's what you said. I'm sorry that that's what you feel. Okay. That's number 1. Number 2 is I have no control over the way you feel. I have no control over what your thoughts are. Again, you're acknowledging what they said. You're acknowledging that you heard what they said about their thoughts. And you're just saying, I have no control over what you think. Not saying that you agree. You're basically saying you don't agree, but that you just don't have any control over what they think, nor do you wish to. Okay. And you have no control over the way you feel about me or this situation or what they think about anything. So that's number 2. Number 3 is your anger is not my responsibility. You can also say your triggers are not my responsibility because a lot of times they are trying to say that they're angry at you, or they might say, you trigger me, you make me angry, all of those things. Their anger about things that you do, or if you trigger them, it's not your responsibility. They have to be responsible for that. Just like if you are triggered about something, it's your responsibility to manage your anger, to manage your triggers, right? Each of us have to manage our own triggers, our own traumas, our own anger. That's our own responsibility to deal with, right? I mean, we have a choice about how we respond to situations, and that's on us. And so that's on them. And so you can just put that back on them. Your anger is not my responsibility. That's number 3. Number 4. Number 4 is one of my favorites. I love this one. Number 4 is I agree that's your opinion. Because you know what? You're basically not agreeing with a thing. But they often hear you say, I agree. So you're saying, I agree. That's what you think. I agree that I heard you say that. You aren't agreeing with a thing, but I agree that's what you said. I agree that's your opinion. I mean, I understand that that's what you feel. You can say things like that, that basically you're just acknowledging them, but you're not agreeing with the thing. I hear you. I agree that that's what you feel. I understand. Things like that are all just acknowledging, but not really anything at all. Okay. Validating in some way. And that's really a lot of times all that people want. Number 5 is I can see that you are. And you just insert the emotion. I can see that you are upset. I can see that you are angry. I can see that you are sad. Whatever it is, just articulate whatever the emotion is that you see them feeling. A lot of times, what's crazy is that you'll say, I can see that you're angry, and they'll say, I'm not angry. How is it that you're feeling? Because they'll be raging. And you'll say, I can see that you are angry about this. I'm not angry. Or they'll be screaming, yelling. I can see that this is upsetting to you. I'm not upset. Because when you call them out on their behavior, they'll be like, oh, I'm not that. They don't want you to characterize their behavior in such a way. It's just kind of funny. But actually observe their behavior to them. That's number 5. If you are so ready to slay all of this, slay your communication, slay your negotiations, that's my what we do here. We slay. Strategy, leverage, anticipate, be 2 steps ahead of them, and focus on you, your case, your position, and slay everything with narcissists. I want you to put slay in the comments right now, because that is what you are going to do. You are going to slay this. You're going to slay this. You're going to shut them down. Put slay in the comments right now, because you can do this. You can shut them down. Put slay in the comments right now. All right. Number 6. Number 6 is another one that you can do. It's like, that's an interesting perspective. That's an interesting perspective. Again, you're just kind of acknowledging. I can't tell you how many times, hundreds of times a day, I get emails from people that, they're like, you know what? I just pulled out your phrases for shutting down narcissists. I picked one and I emailed it back, and it totally worked. Or I have a few memorized and I just pulled one out, used it, totally worked. So totally suggest that you do this. That's an interesting perspective. So that's number 6. And number 7, here's where you're going to really start to create some boundaries. All right. If you want a narcissist respect, start feeling the power. They respect people who stand up to them, who have some confidence. All right. Start to say things like, if you want to engage in a conversation with me, you're going to have to remain calm and not emotional. Or say something like, be factual, not emotional. You're going to have to speak to me in a way that's respectful. There's certain things that are negotiable, contracts, issues, and terms. There's certain things that are not negotiable, and that's your self respect, that's your self worth. So don't allow them to speak to you in a way that's not respectful. Okay. All right. So if you want to engage in a conversation with me, you're going to have to remain calm. You're going to have to speak to me in a way that's respectful. Just say something like that. Totally okay. And it's totally okay for you to go, okay, well, you know what? If you can't, then this conversation is over. Period. And finally, the last one, if they say something that's just absolutely nuclear, not okay, you can just say, I'm choosing not to respond to that. And that's okay too. You know what? I'm choosing not to respond to that. Don't defend yourself. Okay. When you defend yourself, you are giving credence to the other side, you're giving credence to their position, you make yourself look weaker. Never explain, justify, or overshare.